At the moment I placed the ring on the table, she was still chuckling, not a forced or uncertain laugh. It was a genuine laugh, one that reached her eyes, indicating amusement at something truly funny. But what could possibly be so amusing? Her father had announced to no less than 37 people, including my mother, best friend, and 2 colleagues who had traveled 3 hours from Nashville, that I was merely after their family's wealth since first meeting Vivian. This accusation came at our engagement dinner in front of everyone, and she laughed. My name is Cole Merritt. At 35 years old, I'm a software writer. From a laptop in a small one-bedroom apartment in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, I started and transformed my company into something tangible. Something that provides jobs, health insurance, and has been profitable each year since its 2nd year. I grew up with nothing, earned everything on my own. Over the past 2.5 years, I believed I had found my partner to experience life with fully. Regrettably, I was mistaken. Allow me to share an account of that fateful night and the following weeks after I slid the ring across the white tablecloth and exited the restaurant without uttering a word. Firstly, it's crucial you grasp something about Vivian and myself. This wasn't a story with a turbulent beginning. Rather, it was a tale of beauty that made the ending all the more heartbreaking. If such narratives resonate with you, value your dignity over staying in a devaluing environment, please subscribe, comment, and like this video. Your feedback is always appreciated. Now let's retrace our steps to the origin of it all. I encountered Vivian Calloway at a technology conference in Nashville during the spring of 2 years ago. Initially, I wasn't supposed to attend, but fate had other plans. Initially, I intended to dispatch one of my developers, Brandon, as we had 2 product deadlines that week, leaving no room for conference chit-chat. However, Brandon's wife unexpectedly went into labor on a Tuesday morning, forcing me to drive down myself. Vivian was participating in a panel discussing user experience design in healthcare software. She worked for a mid-sized consultancy based in Brentwood, known for digital transformation projects within hospital systems across the Mid-South. Sharp, direct, and clearly the most prepared panelist, she deftly handled a question designed to make the questioner seem intelligent rather than elicit information, while maintaining courtesy. I recall thinking, she has no patience for fools. After the panel, I approached her. Polite but occupied was how she responded. I handed her my business card, mentioning I constructed an optimized patient intake platform that could be beneficial for discussion. She examined the card, then me, responding with, "I'll contact you if I sense potential." Her demeanor was straightforward and unassuming. She didn't feign interest or flirtatiously bat her eyelashes. 4 days later, she sent an email. Our business conversation extended to 2 hours, covering technology, small-town Tennessee, the difference between creation and management, and our shared affection for nature despite never camping since childhood. She was outspoken about healthcare software, expressing critical opinions, including her belief that many platforms in the industry were designed by engineers with no hospital waiting room experience. I concurred with her views. Initially, she appeared slightly taken aback by my swift consent. I disclosed that I had previously engaged in a similar discussion with my own team members 3 months prior and implemented substantial modifications to our product since then. She probed insightful follow-up queries. As did I by the meeting's end, we arranged to meet for coffee in Nashville the subsequent weekend. Upon leaving that coffee encounter, I realized I was in a predicament, not a bad one, but rather an intriguing one. What stood out about Vivian from the start was her utter disregard for presenting a tailored version of herself to benefit others. She voiced her opinions candidly and forthrightly without being unkind. She had no tolerance for facades, which made her enjoyable to be around in a way I hadn't experienced in quite some time. In contrast to other women who were captivating in crowded settings but draining when the crowd dissipated, Vivian was effortless to engage with in private and genuinely mesmerizing in public, because she wasn't striving for attention. Vivian intentionally delayed introducing me to her family, a decision she made carefully due to her privacy regarding personal matters. After 8 months of dating, I finally got the invitation to meet her parents in Knoxville. This moment was significant, carrying a weight that matched my apprehension when pitching investors during my company's initial year. The Calloway residence, situated on 2 acres with a gated entry and circular driveway, boasted a porch reminiscent of magazine covers. The colonial-style house, though aged, was well-maintained, showing signs of longevity rather than flashiness associated with new wealth. no sharp lines or lavish materials replacing comfort. The opposite was true. It was a house that conveyed, "We've stayed here for a while and plan to stay put." I picked up on this vibe even before I stepped out of my truck. Douglas Calloway, the father figure, was a real estate developer in commercial circles, a man who quietly but unmistakably flaunted his wealth accumulated over generations. Tall and silver-haired, he had cultivated the polite demeanor of someone who had spent decades assessing people across conference tables. He shook my hand, poured me an unwanted bourbon, and initiated a dialogue that was casual enough to seem like small talk, yet incisive enough for interrogation. "What's your line of work? How long have you been at it? Is it profitable? Do you personally own the company or do others hold shares?" I replied truthfully to all his inquiries. I shared with him that I established my business 4 years prior, achieved profitability in our second year, bought out my initial investor 18 months ago, and now fully own the company. Currently, we employ 12 full-time staff members and 3 contractors. My recurring revenue is robust enough that I haven't needed to access my savings for over 2 years. He listened attentively to each response, neither warmly nor coldly, but meticulously, much like someone inputting data into an invisible spreadsheet. In contrast to Douglas, Vivian's mother, Patricia, was more approachable. She was a retired high school English teacher running a small nonprofit focusing on literacy initiatives in rural East Tennessee. She inquired about my upbringing, my family background, and books I enjoyed reading. She exhibited warmth where Douglas demonstrated restraint. After that initial dinner, I took a liking to her, although I was uncertain about Douglas, but held him in high regard. A man creating tangible things, shielding his daughter, I found comprehensible. I wasn't taken aback by his examination. I anticipated it. What I didn't anticipate was what followed. Over the ensuing 18 months, Vivian and I developed a deeper bond in aspects significant to us both. We cohabited in a house I acquired near Percy Warner Park in Nashville, a genuine dwelling boasting a yard, a spare room, and a kitchen ample enough for 2 individuals to cook simultaneously without quarreling. She embellished the majority of it. I covered all its expenses. This arrangement felt instinctive at first because I earned significantly more than she did, and we were both sensible enough to acknowledge that without making it awkward. However, Douglas took notice. Each time Vivian shared a detail about our joint life, like a trip to Asheville, an upscale restaurant reservation, the new couch she'd selected, Douglas would make a remark. Initially, no direct remarks were made, only subtle comments. "That seems costly," he remarked when Vivian shared our Charleston weekend. "It appears Cole is prospering," he stated another time. The usage of must lent the sentences a tone less complimentary and more questioning, edged with sharpness. I chose to believe I was overthinking things. Vivian echoed the same sentiment. Douglas's mother advised me to be patient with him, therefore I granted him patience. On a November Wednesday evening at the Kimpton-Ayrton Hotel rooftop in Nashville, where our first official date transpired, I proposed to Vivian. The engagement ring was custom-made, a round-cut diamond in a platinum setting, with guidance from an East Nashville jeweler who had decades of experience and exhibited expertise in his craft. Spent 2 hours in his store on a Saturday morning, pretending to browse, while I carefully observed her selections and disregarded ones she passed by unremarked. She was oblivious of my intention. She assumed I was merely indulging in jewelry shopping. The ring wasn't the most luxurious in existence. It was never meant to be. It was intended to be a ring that Vivian, who appreciated quality and abhorred ostentation, would appreciate daily without feeling overwhelmed. It was subtle yet perfect, mirroring her personality, so I believed they were made for each other. She agreed before my question was fully posed. We called her parents from the rooftop, still chuckling. Patricia wept. Douglas offered his congratulations, which was more warmth in a single sentence than I had ever heard from him, and I thought, perhaps this is our turning point. With this becoming a reality, perhaps he will at last lower his defenses. We arranged the engagement dinner for 3 weeks hence. Vivian suggested inviting more than just our immediate family, opting for close friends and some work associates from both sides as well. Henley on Church Street in Nashville was chosen as the venue, a place dear to us for its authentic Southern cuisine, cozy lighting, and ambience that was festive yet unpretentious. We reserved the private dining room, with Vivian taking charge of the planning details while I handled the reservation and wine selection. A total of 37 guests attended. The evening commenced smoothly, The room was bustling with conversation. My mother, Sandra, had arrived early from Murfreesboro and was already engaged in a lively chat with Vivian's Aunt Carol when I showed up. My college roommate and now doctor in Franklin, Derek Sutton, was entertaining 3 people at the bar with an amusing tale. Patricia Calloway greeted me within the initial 5 minutes, embracing with sincerity as she expressed her joy that Vivian had a partner who appreciated her like I did. I felt content and appreciative. Douglas arrived late but brought an air of assurance that altered the ambience in the room subtly, not abruptly or impolitely, as those who are accustomed to being the center of attention often do. He exchanged handshakes, kissed cheeks, took a glass of wine, and settled at the long central table directly opposite me. The meal began amicably for an hour. The food was delightful, featuring braised short rib, roasted root vegetables, and cornbread my mother deemed the finest she had ever tasted. Tales were shared. Toasts were made. Derek's toast stood out, being both funny and considerate, a kind of tribute only someone who has known you for 15 years can offer, as it carries specificity that means something genuine. Patricia delivered something that caused Vivian to cry happily. In response, Douglas rose from his seat. I sensed an imperceptible alteration in the room, much like detecting a weather change. It wasn't through eyes, but rather the back of one's neck. There was a hush. Individuals who had been conversing ceased. Douglas Calloway possessed such a quality. He commanded attention effortlessly. "I'd like to offer some remarks," he declared, flashing a room-commanding smile. The smile was refined and self-assured, not extending to his upper face. He discussed Vivian initially, praising her as the most resolute individual in every space she entered, highlighting how she had achieved everything through intelligence, diligence, and an unwavering refusal to be underestimated. He expressed this with the pride of a man who genuinely believed it, and his conviction was convincing. It resonated truthfully. All of it was authentic. I admired Vivian for precisely those reasons. Then he addressed me. "And Cole," he said, followed by a pause. An intentional pause ensued. "Upon bringing you home for the first time, I fulfilled my responsibilities as any father would." He smiled, still refined. "You've established a modest enterprise, well done. However, tonight, since we're all here as family, I want to be open." A feeling stirred within me, not fear yet, merely a sense of tranquility. "Vivian has a trust fund," Douglas declared, his voice steady. "She has a renowned lineage, a powerful network, and a future that was set before she ever encountered you. I feel it is important to clarify something that I believe everyone in this room should grasp." He fixed his gaze on me. "Men like Cole, those who rise from nothing, construct small empires and proclaim them victories, often perceive opportunity amidst prosperity. This isn't necessarily a flaw in character, it's simply instinct for survival. But a father recognizes this." The room fell silent. I heard my mother put down her utensil. Douglas continued, remaining calm and smiling. "I'm not casting aspersions on your character, Cole," he said. "I'm merely being truthful, as I always am. You are marrying far above yourself, and it seems apparent to everyone present. I sincerely hope that the feelings you claim for my daughter are genuine, because if they aren't, we will discover the truth. My family does not forgive such behavior lightly." He lifted his glass. "To Vivian," he said, "and to the path this journey may lead them on." A few people hesitantly returned the gesture, unsure whether they had just witnessed something troubling or misunderstood it entirely. I glanced at Vivian. She was not looking at me. Instead, she was gazing at her father with an expression I had never seen on her face before, neither shock nor horror, but a half-smile and relaxed shoulders. At the end of the table, a relative of Vivian, whose name I can't recall then or now, murmured something quietly that I missed. Vivian chuckled subtly, not a full laugh, but one of recognition when finding humor in a situation. In that instant, it dawned on me what I should have realized earlier. Douglas's behavior at our engagement dinner was not an unexpected attack. It wasn't an impulsive blunder from an overprotective father who occasionally said the wrong thing. He openly expressed his true feelings about me in front of 37 guests, and his daughter, who now wears my ring, found humor in it enough to smile. I pondered this revelation for approximately 30 seconds. I crossed the table to retrieve the showcased ring box, Vivian's idea, situated near the centerpiece for all to notice. Taking her ring from her finger, I placed it on the white cloth along with the box, directly before us for everyone to observe. Folding my napkin, I stood up, picked up my jacket from behind my chair, glanced at my mother, whose knowing gaze and still countenance spoke volumes. Derek remained motionless, his glass untouched. Douglas Calloway watched me with a mixture of expectation and observation, like an observer waiting for the conclusion of a foreseen event. Without uttering a word to anyone present, I left the scene. Exited the secluded dining area of Henley, traversed its spacious interior past the bar and bustling dinner tables, overlooked by the chilly November breeze outside Church Street in Nashville through the glass doors. On the pavement for roughly a minute, I inhaled deeply. The crisp November air in Nashville that night was biting enough to fog your breath. There was vehicular traffic on Church Street, Ubers and cabs, passers-by headed to the bar district a few blocks away, someone walking a dog adorned with humiliating paw boots. Ordinary Friday night scene. The world appeared indifferent to the recent events within that restaurant, a realization that struck me as both absurd and reassuring at that moment. I contemplated re-entering. Admittedly, I did consider it. Standing on that sidewalk, I pondered you could return inside. Opting to return later and complete dinner while dealing with the issue privately tomorrow seemed mature and composed. However, thoughts of my solitary-raising mother sitting at that table after hearing what transpired swayed my decision. My mother, who worked tirelessly for years, never made me feel inferior, having to listen to a man publicly accuse her son of chasing someone else's money. Consequently, I chose not to re-enter. I climbed into my vehicle and departed. Vivienne texted after 11 minutes, then called, followed by more texts and additional calls. I read the messages but didn't respond to any. The contents were, "I need you. Where are you, Cole? Please, Cole. I realize it was awful and I'm sorry. Please just speak with me. I understand why you left, but we need to talk tonight. This isn't our ending. Avoid making this our ending." I set my phone down on my kitchen counter and sat in the darkness for a considerable period. My mother phoned me at 11:30. I picked up. She didn't inquire about my emotions or advise me on what to do. Instead, she said, "I observed your expression from across that table tonight. I wanted you to understand that I am proud of you." Later, she mentioned she was driving back to Murfreesboro and suggested I contact her in the morning. I agreed. She expressed her love for me. I reciprocated. We ended the call. I couldn't sleep that night. Vivienne arrived home around midnight. I remained in the kitchen. She took a seat opposite me at the kitchen table, the same table where we had our Sunday breakfast, where she worked late into the night, and where we discussed our future with an air of certainty, thinking we already knew its form. She seemed worn out. Her makeup appeared smeared, indicating tears. "I'm sorry," she murmured. I studied her for a moment. "For what precisely are you apologizing? For your father's words, the way he delivered them, or for failing to defend you when he did so?" "You laughed," I pointed out. She shut her eyes. "I need you to clarify that for me, Vivienne, because I've been here for 4 hours, trying to understand how the person who agreed to marry me could sit at our engagement dinner and laugh, while my father accused me of gold digging in front of 37 people. I wasn't laughing at what he said," she explained. "I was laughing at something Madison said beside me. It had nothing to do with that." "It did," I replied. "You were laughing during that moment. The entire room felt as it did, and so did I." She fell silent. "Were you aware he was going to say something like that?" I inquired. Another prolonged pause followed. "This one is longer," she replied. "I knew he had reservations," she admitted cautiously. "He's expressed them before, not exactly in that manner, but before." "You believed he would be polite towards me, despite his past expressions of suspicion about our relationship. I assumed this gathering was meant for celebration, and he would behave appropriately," I echoed. "Given your private doubts that he perceived me as a gold digger, I found it astonishing that you expected him to act courteously in front of a crowd, let alone be gracious." She had no response for that. "Let me clarify something," I said. "I am not moved by your trust fund. From the start, I've never been concerned about your wealth. I possess more than enough already, and it's not the type you come from, but mine honestly earned. Tonight, your father publicly declared to a room full of people who know me, including my mother, that I am a fraud. And there you sat, laughing." "Cole, I still have something else to say," she interrupted. "I have no desire to reclaim it. I'm not keen on discussing the future of our relationship at this moment. What I seek clarity on is straightforward. Do you hold similar views as your father about me? To any extent, even secretly, you allowed him to voice his opinions while I didn't." You chuckled. Her gaze lingered for a considerable period. "No," she replied. "Absolutely not, but you gave him the platform. I didn't." You laughed. The ensuing silence was palpable and all-consuming. She departed from the kitchen and retired to bed. I remained where I was until dawn. The subsequent 10 days were the most peculiar of my adulthood. Vivienne and I maintained a polite demeanor. much like people do when deciding whether to terminate or salvage something significant. We shared meals. We talked about mundane matters, jobs, schedules, an urgent plumbing issue in the guest bathroom that required immediate attention regardless of other circumstances. We handled each other cautiously, hinting at a rupture. On a Sunday, Derek visited, spending 3 hours on my back porch without attempting to dictate my actions. Instead, he listened. When I ceased speaking, he commented, "You've identified the problem, haven't you? It's not what Douglas said, it's that she knew his thoughts and communicated them without your knowledge." "Yes, I realize," I replied. "What are your plans?" "I'm still deciding," I stated. 5 days following our dinner, a call arrived from Douglas Calloway. I debated answering, considering letting it go to voicemail, but an underlying persistence or the wish to hear his words drove me to pick up. "Cole," he said, maintaining the same composed tone, "I owe you an apology." I did not speak out. "What I expressed at dinner was inappropriate," he added. "It was unsuitable for the occasion and lacked a suitable tone." I want you to understand that I'm aware he was apologizing about the setting and tone, not the message. "Do you truly stand by what you stated?" I inquired, a brief, unexpected silence. "I believe my daughter has worked diligently for everything she owns, and I aim to safeguard her accomplishments." "That's not what I asked," I clarified. "Do you think I'm with Vivian for her wealth?" After a longer pause. "I believe," he responded eventually, "that human motivations can be intricate, and it's a father's responsibility to ask tough questions." "I comprehend," I said. "Cole, Mr. Calloway, I was raised in a house in Smyrna, Tennessee, where my mother worked double shifts at a nursing home for 8 years while I was in school. I wore the same pair of jeans for 2 years during middle school because we couldn't afford new ones. I established my company using a credit card that I maxed out multiple times before it began to succeed. I've never asked your daughter for anything, and I never would. However, I wish to make it clear. Overheard your conversation at dinner, and your subsequent words were also audible. Good night." After that call, Vivian inquired about our discussion. I disclosed the details. She remained silent for a while before asking, "Did he actually apologize?" It was more of a statement than a question. I replied, "Not for the crucial part." That particular moment, not dinner, laughter, or silence afterwards, revealed a transformation in Vivian's expression. It seemed like new information had settled somewhere unexpected. "I've been handling him since forever," she whispered. "I mastered the skill so well that I became oblivious to it." "Where does this put me?" I inquired. She was silent for some time before admitting, "I'm not sure." Although this tale isn't straightforward and Vivian is not a villainess, I want to give her the benefit of doubt. During the ensuing fortnight, Vivian and I delved into discussions that perhaps should have taken place prior to our engagement, substantive ones rather than the casual, optimistic, seemingly strategic chats that resemble planning. Instead, we explored the challenging topics of family ties, loyalty, and the contrast between being chosen by someone versus feeling attached to a family that exerts its own magnetic force. Vivian shared details with me she had never disclosed before. She confided in me about Douglas's opposition towards every serious relationship she had ever had, and how there was a man preceding me, a Memphis-based lawyer named Tyler, who endured a 3-year tenure until Douglas eroded the relationship through subtle criticism and tactical self-doubt seeding, leaving Vivian clouded by her father's opinions. She asserted that she had grown wiser, more independent, and capable of discerning her own judgments from those of her father. She admitted that when she agreed to your proposal, she truly thought it would work out. She confided in me that when Douglas shared his reservations about you privately, she sincerely believed she could maintain emotional distance without having to make a choice. She said that his doubts were the kind that would vanish on their own once he got to know you better and understood your true nature. She recounted how at the dinner, when Douglas stood up to speak, she felt the ground give way beneath her, and instead of intervening, she became paralyzed. The laughter she displayed, which you witnessed, was not a sign of agreement or amusement at your expense. Rather, it was an automatic response, a sound her body produced when she was overwhelmed and mortified beyond belief. I accepted her explanation as truth. Accepting that truth was the challenging part. I could see it in every word she spoke. She wasn't a woman who secretly endorsed her father's opinion of me. Instead, she was a woman who had spent 34 years navigating her father's dominating persona without fully escaping it. The issue was whether she could actually alter this dynamic, and if I was prepared to be patient while waiting for the answer. We spent 3 days apart. She stayed with Patricia. I remained in the house, working and running at Percy Warner Park every morning at 6, braving the cold and darkness. This routine seems to provide clarity like nothing else does. On the third day, I contacted Derek. "If you return," he stated, "Douglas emerges victorious. He tested you at that dinner, perhaps not intentionally, but he did. He aimed to see if you would yield. If you go back to that engagement without a fundamental shift, it suggests that you'll tolerate whatever he throws your way and stay regardless. If you decide against returning, you forfeit Vivian, someone you love, who is distinct from her father. Such a choice doesn't offer a straightforward solution, I acknowledge. In truth, there's no easy answer, only what one can endure. I pondered this for 2 more days. On the 5th day, Vivian returned and resumed our conversation at that kitchen table. She too had been wrestling with her thoughts as deeply as I had, and it showed in her expression. "I've consulted a therapist," she confided. 3 times over the past week, reflecting on matters long unaddressed, about my father, about patterns. I waited. "I'm not asking you to disregard the incident at dinner," she clarified, "nor am I seeking your forgiveness for my father. I'm posing a question. Can you trust that I have the capacity to make different choices than I have before? Because I believe I do." You comprehend my lack of reason to merely accept your assertion blindly. "What constitutes a different choice?" I inquired. "It implies that I have already informed my father that if he fails to extend you a sincere and unreserved apology, not an apology for the venue or tone, but for the accusation itself, he will be absent from our wedding. And I am serious about that." I scrutinized her intently. "Did you inform him of this?" "Indeed." "What was his response?" She held my gaze steadily. "He stated that he required time to ponder over it." "And what was your reaction to that?" "I told him he had 2 weeks, and during those 2 weeks I would be using the time to determine if the man I am betrothed to is someone I am ready to advocate for strongly, openly, and unapologetically from this moment onward. And my answer was yes. My answer has always been yes. I merely needed to overcome my fear of him sufficiently to act as though it were so. I pondered on that for a considerable length of time. Rebuilding trust isn't something swift or accomplished in a single conversation. It's forged in countless small moments over time, through observing someone's actions change for the better, discovering that the pledges made casually hold under pressure. However, allow me to share this. Vivian Calloway has demonstrated courage in fighting for us since that dinner, and her actions have been far from simple. She engaged with her father in discussions I was excluded from, then shared the details with me later. She established boundaries for his behavior and made clear the repercussions if they were breached. Vivian didn't clean up her family's mess and present me with a polished version. She showed me the process, the raw, imperfect, continuous effort it takes. In February, Douglas visited our apartment and sat across from me at the kitchen table. A distinct chair from Vivian's, the same table. He gazed at me for a protracted moment before he spoke. His words fell short of what I yearned for, though I cannot feign otherwise. There was no outpouring of regret or speech crafted to please all. Instead, he admitted, "I misjudged what I suggested during that dinner. Since then, I have observed you via my daughter's perspective, her stories, and the insights I allowed myself to perceive. I erred." He offered his hand. I accepted it. Not because the past was undone, not because our relationship had miraculously healed, but because Vivian had defied her father by choosing me. The ring adorned her finger once more. We possessed 340 days until the wedding. I would not squander all of them revisiting that dinner. There are truths I comprehend now that I was unaware of 2.5 years ago when I encountered Vivian Calloway following a panel discussion in Nashville. Understanding someone requires more than just loving them. You must also comprehend the environment from which they emerge. Not to judge, but to recognize the aspects of their past they still hold onto and those they've left behind. Overlooking this detail leaves you with an incomplete picture of who they truly are. Time eventually reveals what you failed to see. Sometimes it's a minor incident, a learning experience that fades away. Yet at other times, it could be a public embarrassment during an engagement dinner, when the person you care for laughs as their family publicly dismantles you. Although someone's behavior in such humiliating moments may not define who they are entirely, it carries significant weight and serves as valuable information. The challenge is not whether to consider this information, but how to integrate it into your understanding. And the answer to that question lies in what transpires next. Through her daily appearances, sporadic and disorganized over an extended duration, Vivian materialized. This was more than I had anticipated. Yet she appeared. I am aware Douglas Calloway is not a beast, but rather an individual who amassed such authority in his family's sphere for so long that he lost the ability to discern protection from domination. On that particular night, he truly thought he was safeguarding his daughter. Regardless of its justification, this does not make his actions acceptable. Yet, comprehending his motives allows me to coexist with him. This is what Vivian required me to do. A matrimony isn't merely a coupling of two individuals, it's a bargain involving everyone those people bring into the room. I grasped this concept theoretically before that meal. I experience it viscerally now. The self who exited Henley on that November night, the one who set the ring upon the table without utterance, who eschewed a grand display of conflict, who instead chose to depart from a scenario no longer conducive to his comfort, this version was not indifferent. It was not apathetic. It was not sending a message. It was merely expressing truth. A vital fact had been disclosed about the room he occupied, and he reacted accordingly with clarity. I am content for him. That inherent impulse, the one that whispers, I shall not linger in a place that diminishes me, that impulse is valuable, even when remaining seems simpler, even when departing entails genuine loss. My mother, Sandra Merritt, who had driven from Murfreesboro to celebrate my engagement, was present at a gathering where a man publicly labeled me as a gold digger. The following morning, she called without mentioning the incident. Instead, she inquired about my well-being and expressed pride in me, both sentiments holding true. Such behavior is characteristic of her, a testament to her dignity. Values I had learned from her long before they became relevant. Vivian and I are set to wed in 11 months, at a modest farm ceremony outside Franklin, Tennessee, attended by fewer than 50 people. Derek serves as my best man, Patricia will offer a toast, and Douglas will behave owing to Vivian's clear stipulations that the terms are non-negotiable. I am unsure about our future together. Perhaps we'll simply learn to tolerate each other. If enough time passes and he continues to strive for the improved version of himself, there might be more between us. However, I'm not counting on it. I neither harbor resentment nor hold a grudge, as grudges are burdensome and a wedding is pending. The ring, which graced a white tablecloth in Henley on Church Street's private dining room for around 22 minutes while I navigated downtown Nashville, fits impeccably. It always did. The instance when Cole placed the ring upon the table without uttering a word and then departed silently is what lingers in my thoughts. For most of us, after being shamed as he was, we erupt or become immobile. We either make it boisterous or keep it discreet. Yet Cole did neither. He merely left serenely, leaving everything undisturbed. I believe there's a great strength in that silent departure. Dignity doesn't always announce its presence. Sometimes it just as silently rises and departs. What do you think? Would you have left or stood firm to resist in that very room? Share your thoughts below. I take the time to read every response. If you appreciate this style of storytelling, consider subscribing. More is on the way.